All right, and good day, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles with your host, Oliver Blue. And today is another opportunity for us to move forward, to advance, and to progress in our transformation and in the renewing of our minds to the truth that is true always. And today we're going to be starting another section of this final leg of these workbook lessons out of A Course in Miracles. This last section is pretty structured around a central theme, and then we cover 10 lessons around that central theme. And so today starts another central theme as we head towards the grandstand or the grand finale, I guess you might say. And so today's theme is very interesting. It is a religious subject that we all have had some type of exposure to. And today we're going to be looking at this idea that the course answers a question, puts in the form of a question, and it is, and the question is, what is the last judgment? What is the last judgment? We just finished the section on what is the second coming, which these two kind of tie together. And that's only based on, I guess you might say, religious history, because they tie the two in traditional religion. They tie the two ideas together: the second coming and the last judgment. In traditional religion, it is taught that the second coming is the return of Christ, or the return of God in the person of Christ, and that God is returning in the person of Christ to deploy the final judgment on humanity. And so this whole idea about the second coming and the final judgment, as we have been exposed to, and as it has been taught through certain literature, specifically the Bible and other literature, it is taught that the second coming of Christ is the return of God in the person of Christ to levy final judgment on humanity. And so in that judgment, there will be a division, there will be separation. Again, here's that idea of separation, which got us in trouble in the first place. And so the idea is that I apologize. The idea is that judgment is going to be awarded to humanity based on whether they were good or bad, whether one accepted the idea that there is the one way to salvation, and that is through the acknowledgement of Jesus Christ And if one doesn't acknowledge or accept Jesus Christ, then one will be placed on the left, and all that does be placed on the right. So there's a separation, and the ones that are placed on the left will be sent to eternal punishment, and the ones on the right will be be sent to eternal bliss. That's the story as it has been universally taught through religion, which is why most people have this dread or fear of God, seeing God, or have this perception of God of being this vengeful, angry, unmerciful deity that is going to finally leverage punishment on all those who have disobeyed. and then there will be the remnant that will get away scotch-free. And that's the whole idea of the Last Judgment as it is taught in traditional religious circles. However, as you already know, from the Course in Miracles perspective, the whole idea of God itself comes from a totally different awareness, from a totally different consciousness, from a totally different perspective or perception. And that is that it comes from the perspective that God is and there is nothing else, and that God is love. And all that God can ever be is love. God is reality. There is nothing else. All else that appear is not real, and it really doesn't exist. So our experience here in a body and in a physical world, it's just what it is a temporary experience. It does not touch or taint or change or alter reality. That which God is remains. That which God created remains. And that which was is what will always be, unchanged and unalterable, and it is that way now. And all else is an illusion. And so, on the one hand, there's this picture of God as being demanding obedience or demanding complete allegiance, and if not, there's eternal punishment. And on the other hand, God is love, and that love is all there is. All else are illusions. And that's the Course perspective. That which is real cannot be threatened, can't be changed or altered. That which is unreal does not exist. Therein lies the peace of God. So where, in those two ideas, where do you find peace? Do you find peace in a vengeful God, or do you find peace in a God of love? You have to make that choice for yourself. I've been on both sides of the ideas. I love love. I like the consistent idea that God is love, and in God there is no darkness at all. God is reality, and unreality does not exist as far as God's concerned. As far as God's concerned, this world don't even exist. God is, and there is nothing else. And if we exist in that God is as love. The choice is yours. And so, given those two perspectives, we're going to bring you what is the Last Judgment and what it says from the Course's perspective, from this perspective and the consistency that God is love. And the only thing that God can produce is love. Because God can only produce after its own kind. The universe produces after its own kind. Everything produces after its own kind. That is consistent. And so we're going to see what Course says about what is the Last Judgment. Are you ready? I know the subject has interested a lot of people because there's a tremendous amount of fear that one lives in, thinking that at the end of their incarnation, at the end of their life, at some point they're going to be stood before the judgment throne of God and be judged whether or not they continue to exist in a loving manner or to exist in a manner that you don't even want to think about. And that creates a tremendous amount of fear in people. You don't know the number of people that have graced this earth and their entire life was lived in fear of a final judgment because that's what they were taught. You don't know how many people that are currently on the planet that have been taught and conditioned through their religious communities that there's a final judgment, and that judgment may include their eternal existence to be lived out in a torture chamber. That's the way I describe it. And how people fear that judgment, how they fear God. But at the same time, the same literature said that God is love. Doesn't make sense, does it? But that's the insanity that humanity has gone. That's the extent of insanity that we go to when we reject reality, when we reject the reality of who we are. It will drive you insane. The idea of separation will drive you to insanity. The idea that you are this personal self, this temporary personal self, separate from everyone else and even separate from your creator. That idea, that one thought in of itself is so frightening, so fearful. But it's so not true. Ideas cannot leave their source. That's a universal principle. And we are a God idea. Therefore, we cannot leave our source. Therefore, we cannot be separate from that which created us. And God did not create us as bodies or as individual minds. But what God created before the world was, what God created in eternity past, was its very own self. And that's it. All other seeming creations, came from an idea of separation, came from an idea that creation and creator could be separate and apart and have separate wills and have separate purpose. That's where all other ideas came out of, the belief in separation. It created an entire thought system. It created an entire world that was built on the idea of separation. But we have learned from the Course that nothing really happened. Just like when you fall asleep tonight in your bed and it happened to dream. You could dream some of the most outrageous dreams, some of the most fearful, nightmarish dreams, or you can dream good dreams. Doesn't matter. A dream is a dream. It comes from a mind that believes it's separate. A full mind that believes that it's separate. That's where the dream comes from. It's a hallucination It's an illusion. It's an idea that is not true. So when you wake up from the dream, you realize that it's not real. That's what happened to us collectively. Collectively, somehow, somewhere, we entertain an idea of separation. That we left God, we left home, we left our reality, we left our true nature, we left our perfection, our innocence, our wholeness, our completeness. And according to the Course, it is impossible for that to happen. It can only happen in hallucinations and dreams and vain imaginings and fantasies. And so when humanity in his waking self wakes up and recognize the reality that that is not the truth, and realize that who he is a reflection of the reflection of the oneness that he shared with God and with all living things. Then he realized even this world and everything in form is but another level of dreaming. But you can have a happy dream, right? To wake up in the dream is to have a happy dream. So what is the last judgment? Let's see what the Course says. It says that the second coming of Christ, which we dealt with in the last 10 lessons, when we said the second coming of Christ is nothing more than the recognition that we made an error. And the error has been corrected. Let me go back there. It says the second coming, Christ's second coming, which is sure as God, is merely the correction of mistakes and the return of sanity. It is a part of the condition that restores that which was never lost, and it reestablishes what is forever and forever true. The second coming is merely, it is your experience of awakening to your reality. It's your experience of being enlightened to the reality that nothing has changed, nothing has been altered. It's a return of the mind to its original state of being. It's the return of the mind to the truth. That God is my creator, God is my father, God is the father of all life, and that which God has created cannot be altered or changed. Therefore, I remain as God created me. That is the second, that's how the Course describes the second coming. It's basically the awakening or the new birth. It's when these 8 billion expressions in form get an insight on their true identity. When you wake up to the truth, you return to yourself. It's the second recognition of your true identity. Because at one point we recognized who we were, and then we fell asleep. And so the second coming of our identification is when we wake up to the truth. It is not some grand event that you're going to observe with your natural eye. In fact, Jesus already told you. If anyone ever tell you, go over there, there's the kingdom. Or watch here, there's the kingdom, it's coming. He said, don't even consider it. He said, the kingdom is without observation. It comes without observation. He said, the kingdom of God is you, is your identity, your true self. And so the recognition of that is the second coming, or the second realization of the one realization. So Christ's second coming it says Christ's second coming basically is our awakening, or our enlightenment, or our new birth. Like Jesus told Nicodemus, you must be born again. In other words, you was already born one time, you need to be born again. It is the second coming. He said, Christ's second coming gives what God created, which is you and me. It gives us this gift. So the second coming of Christ is the gift of God. It's the awakening of humanity from being asleep to its reality to being awake to its reality. And it says it is the gift that God has given to us. And that gift comes in this way. It says it is to hear the voice for God. This is the gift of the second coming. To hear the voice for God, proclaim or to declare that what is false, and what is true has never changed. He said, this is the gift that we receive when we awake to the truth, when we become conscious of Christ's consciousness, when we become conscious of reality, when we become aware that of our oneness with God and with each other and all living things, when we come to the awareness or the recognition that there is only the one. He said that comes with the gift of hearing the voice for God declare or proclaim that what is false, and what is true can never change. The Course says it this way in its summary of the whole Course. It says that which is real cannot be threatened. Meaning, what is true has never changed or can never change. And then it says that which is not real does not exist. Meaning, that which is false is false. And then it concluded that herein, these two realities is the peace of God. Herein is the peace of God. This is when you will actually experience peace with God. When you embrace reality that what God created is what is timeless and formless and changeless and unalterable, which is you. And that which is not a creation of God, but what was made through the mind of the separated man. He said that which is not real does not exist. And when we embrace that reality, he said, therein lies the peace. We will now We will now experience the peace of God, because we have now embraced the truth of who we are. That it is absolutely impossible for us to be separate from our Creator. That it's absolutely impossible for us to make anything that is a worthy substitute of what God created. That is the gift, to hear that false is false and true can never be changed. That is good news. Because to embrace the other idea is to embrace the idea that love can be altered and can be changed, that God can be altered and can be changed, that what God creates can be altered and can be changed. And if that is the truth, we're all in the boat without a paddle, and we're up the creek, and there's no way out. But when the foundation of our life is based on the reality that God is, and there is nothing else, and it can't be altered, it can't be changed, and there's the will of God, and that was what will prevail over all else, then we can stand with confidence and a surety and a certainty that all is well. We can relax, we can rest in the peace of God and enjoy the journey, enjoy the experience, knowing that which is real and that which is not. That's why it's so critical that we come to understand reality. What is our reality? Who are we in truth? Because until that happens, there will be this instability. There will be this doubt and this worry and this fear of judgment, fear of condemnation. And fear has torment. And there is no peace in torment. So knowing our true identification should be our utmost goal. It should be our utmost priority, is to come to know who you are. That's why Jesus asked his disciples, who do they say that I am? He knew who he was. Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that you are? Who are you? Adam, where are you? Is the question. Where are you? Who are you? Do you know who you are? Because who you are is timeless and formless and changeless and unalterable. Who you are is what your Creator created. Who you are is the truth that is true always. And so this is the gift. And this, the judgment, is in which perception ends. The perceptual world only exists because of the idea of a false idea, that separation can really happen. And out of that false idea, we made a perceptual world. But once we embrace the truth that false is false and truth is unchangeable, then that is the judgment on the perceptual world, and the perceptual world ends. This world that we live in, it really becomes purposeless when we embrace the reality that that which is true, that is still the only thing that really remains. That's the only thing that really exists. All else is just play. It's just play. It's just entertainment. At first, you see a world that has accepted this as true. Projected from a now corrected mind. Before we awake to this reality, before we recognize before we are enlightened to reality of what is real and what is not, before that happens, we accept that the perceptual world is true. We accept that separation is real. We accept that these body cells and these mind cells are real. But when we perceive them or project them from a corrected mind, when our mind is correct, when our mind is renewed to the reality that only reality exists, we don't see the world that way anymore. And with this holy sight, which we call Christ's vision, where we see all things as the one thing, where we embrace that only that which God created is eternal and it's real. It says, when we embrace this holy sight, perception gives a silent blessing and then disappears. Its goal accomplished and its mission is done. And what the Course is saying here is, eventually this perceptual world that we're in will come to an end, because it will have no more meaning. It will have no more purpose when all humanity wakes up to the reality that which God has created is changeless, and that this perceptual world is not even real. These perceptual bodies are not even real. These temporary minds are not even real. But the only thing that is real is what God created, which is the I am, which is that which is eternal, that which is infinite, that which is self-aware, and that which is impersonal, which is the one life, the one reality, the one being that we all share as one. It's called life. And in life, there is no birth, there is no death. Life always has been, and it will forever be. And we will forever be a part of that, because that is who we are. That is what we are. And so with this holy sight, perception gives a silent blessing and then disappears. It's the disappearing of the universe as we know it. Its goal is accomplished and its mission is done. And that mission and that goal is done and over with when all humanity eventually wakes up to the reality of their oneness with God, to the reality that separation never occurred, to the reality that sin is not real, death is not real, to the reality that every single solitary appearance of a body's mind in this world, of a soul in this world that came here and left here as it appeared, that all that God has created has remained as God created it. And no dream, no vain imagining, no fantasy, no hallucination can ever change that. Doesn't matter how much trauma gave evidence to the opposite. Don't matter how much appearance that this world has tried to show that love is not real, that everything is broken and divided and weak. None of that changed the reality of what God created. And so eventually it says all of that will disappear. This is the Last Judgment. The Last Judgment is making reference to the fact that there is nothing to judge. Because all that we think or thought needed or was deserving of judgment, that in reality it does not exist. It's like a movie. It's like a dream. It does not exist. It is not reality. All the judgment, all the dreamers in the dream, and the actors and the actress, all of humanity that seem to be involved in this promoting separation. He said it doesn't even exist. All of that drama didn't change anything. All of the killing, all of the fighting, all the births and the deaths, and the lack and the scarcity didn't change a thing. All of the bawling and squalling and the crying and the weeping and the gnashing ain't changed anything. All of the wars and rumors of the wars and all of the destruction that we've seen didn't change anything. Only in a movie. And so it says the final judgment on the world contains no condemnation. Paul picked it up in Romans. He said there is therefore no condemnation, because everything has been reconciled back into the one thing, which is Christ. That's what Christ means. Christ means oneness. And where there's oneness, there's no two-ness or three-ness or four-ness. There's no second or third or fourth. There's only the one. There's only the original. There's only the truth. And so the final judgment on the world contains no condemnation. For the judgment sees the world as totally forgiven. What do you do to dreams? You forgive them. What do you do to movies when you get up and walk away from them? You forgive them. You say, hey, it was good, entertaining. But it's not real. You don't embrace that as your reality. You don't wake up from a dream and say, oh, that's my reality. You don't go to a movie and say, oh, that's my reality. No, you say, oh, it was a good movie. It's a good entertainment. That's all your life is, a good entertainment. It's a good movie. It's not who you are. It's not what you are. The events and the activities in your life, whether they're good or bad, they're not who you are. They don't define you. It's just a summary of what you experienced. You're not a summary of what you experienced. You are what God created. So the world is totally forgiven. Let the world go free. Without sin and holy, purposeless. The world is forgiven without sin and wholly purposeless. Why? Because we realize it is not real. Your body experiences here are not real. The world as we know it in its physical form is not real. It's a temporary projection that comes from us. In reality, it is the projection of a mind that has gone mad. It's a projection of a mind that believes that it's separate from love. That's how the world was made. God could not make a world with lack or scarcity or destructive nature or of multiplicity. Oneness can only produce after its own kind. God could only produce love. So without a cause, the world has no cause. And now without a function, the world has no function. In Christ's vision, in the mind of God, in truth, it has no cause. Listen, if everything in reality remains as it originally is, that means that everything else ultimately has no purpose. It's purposeless. And it said, without a cause and without a function, it merely slips away into nothingness. Yes, eventually the world would disappear as we know it. All form would disappear as we know it. All of the dream, when all humanity wakes up, the dream is over. Just like when you no longer hold an idea for something, the idea is over. Why? Because you are the source. We are the source of all that has been made. We are the source of all that which has been created. And when we no longer hold on to a world of meaninglessness, when we no longer hold on to an idea of judgment, it disappears. Back into the nothingness from which it came, back into the tiny mad idea that suggested it. And so the final judgment on the world contains no condemnation. Why would you condemn a dream? Why would you condemn nothing? There's no condemnation in you. You are love. So there is no condemnation to be given. God is love, so there's no condemnation to be given. So where did the condemnation come from? It came from the mind of humanity, who believed that it was separate from its love source. And we have come to find out that that was not true. We only dreamed that we were. We only imagined that we were. And when the dream and the imagination is over and done with, it returns back to the nothingness that it is. That's all it's saying here. And that the world is forgiven. And that without a cause and now without a function, in Christ's sight, it merely slips away to nothingness. So where is the judgment? Where is the separation? Where is the damnation? Where is the bad ones on the left and the wrong ones on the right? When we're seeing through the eyes of Christ, when we're seeing through the eyes of love, where is the judgment? Where did that ideal come from? And all the figures in the dream. There it says, it merely slips away into nothing. There it was born, and there it ends as well. Where the suggestion of separation entered, and here it says it ended at the same moment. That's what it's called, the atonement, that nothing really happened. That's why we can forgive everyone and anyone and anything for anyone, for everything or anything, because it really didn't happen. What we thought occurred has not happened. What happens in dreams is not real. That's why you can forgive anybody. You realize what? It's only a part of the dream. And dreams are not real. So I can forgive my brother. Why? Because he didn't really do anything. I can forgive the entire world. It ain't really done nothing. You haven't changed the truth. So I can let it go. It says, and all the figures in the dream, all the bodies, all the minds, all that have come and gone, all the figures in the dream, see? All the figures in the dream in which the world began to go with it. So all the figures in the dream merely slip into nothingness. All that which is born, it ends as well. All the figures in the dream in which the world began go with the nothingness. Bodies now are useless. Or the idea of bodies are useless in Christ's vision when we see reality, and will therefore fade away, because what God created is limitless. What we made with limits. The body is an expression of limits. The body is a reflection of need. The body is a reflection of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. It's an idea of limitless. But what is true is that we are a part of an unlimited creation. We're part of an unlimited nature. We are a part of a forever nature, an infinite nature. So the ideas of birth and death and lack and scarcity and fear and sin and guilt and death, they're all an illusion. They don't really exist. I know this is helping somebody. This is removing the fear from a lot of folks. I know. It removed the fear from me. Bodies now are useless and will therefore fade away because what God created is limitless. So God didn't create bodies. This is an idea of man dreaming of separation. You who believe that God's last judgment would condemn the world to hell along with you, you who believe that, accept this holy truth. God's judgment is the gift of correction that he bestowed on all of our errors, freeing us from our error and all the effects that our errors ever seem to have made. That is the final judgment. That is the last judgment. It is the gift of correction. The Course in Miracles is a correction to our error. There are many other writings that are a correction to our error, to bring us out of fear, to bring us out of condemnation, and to bring us out of judgment. And the last judgment is the correction, because once we are embrace the correction of who we are, we realize that what? There's nothing to judge. There's nothing to condemn. There's nothing to separate or to divide. There's only the one. And so that brings the peace of God to every heart. That is what the prodigal son is seeking. That is what everyone on this planet right now is seeking to find and to be made aware of and to recognize and to awaken to the reality of their true identity. Knowing that we are as God created us. We are as God. And who we really are is timeless and formless, infinite and eternal, changeless and unalterable, loving and lovable, birthless, deathless. We are what God is. And with that reality, you who believe that God's last judgment would condemn the world to hell along with you, accept this holy truth. God's judgment is the gift of the correction. The Course in Miracles is a message of correction. The miracle is a shift in our perception. That we no longer embrace this insane idea of being separate from one another or being separate from our Creator. That is the correction. That we remain as God created us. That is the correction. That we are one with the eternal, everlasting, loving Creator itself. That we appear in the person of God. That's the correction. That's where the peace of God lies, in embracing that true reality about our identification. That is the last judgment. That is the second coming. And he says, therefore bodies become useless and therefore fade away, because the Son of God, or what God created, is limitless. And so in this correction, which God has bestowed upon all error, freeing us from all error and all effects that ever seem to have, freeing us from the thought of separation. That is the one idea that needs correction. That is the one thing that humanity needs to be healed from, the belief in separation. The belief that we are something different than what God is. That's what we need to be healed from. To fear God's saving grace, to fear this correction, to reject our true reality, to reject the love that we are, the divinity that we are, the oneness that we are, to reject that. He says to reject or to fear God's saving grace, because that is God's saving grace, that we remain as God created us. That's the saving grace of God. And it says grace and peace comes through the knowledge or the knowing of this. Grace and peace be multiplied through the knowledge, through the knowing. That's how it comes. We recognize it through the knowing, through the direct experience. To fear this, which is to fear the correction, to fear your true identity, is but to fear complete release from suffering. Is to fear the return to peace. Is to fear security and happiness and union with your own identification. So we must embrace our true identity if and when we return, or before we can return. Even the prodigal son, in the story of the prodigal son, he came to himself. What does that mean? He came to realize that he was in error. When you come to realize that you are in error in your thinking, in your believing, it is then and only then can you return to your true identification. You have to come to the end of yourself. You have to come to the end of the illusion. You have to come to the end of the error, the end of the mistake. It's not a sin to not know. It's an error. It's a mistake. And the error and the mistake that we all made can be corrected by recognition. We just recognize this is, hey, I made a mistake here. The prodigal son did. And you don't have to wait till you get in the pig pen. You don't have to wait till life gets dire. You don't have to wait till you are at the end of your rope or the end of your mind. But right now and in any moment, in every moment, the grace of God is being extended to us. The voice that speaks for God is giving us an insight, is sharing the gift with us, the gift of correction. Urging us, offering us the gift of life. And we're holding on to what? Judgment. And he said, when we do that, we but fear release from our own suffering. We fear complete release from peace and from security and from happiness and from our own identity. We hold the key to our peace through the acceptance of the truth. That is true always. So God's final judgment, notice now, and then say the world's final judgment, a man's final judgment, which we've been highly conditioned in, highly trained in, mostly in our religious communities. That's man's final judgment. That ain't God's judgment. God is love. That means there is no judgment. God is love. That means that what? The judgment had already been rendered. There is no judgment. There is no condemnation. God's not going to judge himself to a torture chamber. God's not going to judge himself. He's not going to destroy himself or herself or itself, because God's not a gender. Let's get that straight. But God is a what? Loving reality. So a loving reality is not going to destroy himself, not going to give loving reality up for judgment. But so God's final judgment is as merciful as every step in his appointed plan to bless his creation and call his creation to return to the eternal peace that he shares with him. That's God's final judgment. It's full of mercy. It's full of grace. And the grace and the mercy is included in what God created originally when he created it, when he created you. And the call to return to this eternal peace, which he shared with you. The peace that we seek is the peace of God. It's not a separate peace. The joy, the happiness, fulfillment that we seek is not separate from the joy and the happiness and the peace of God. It's only one. And God's not going to condemn himself. Just like you in the natural, you wouldn't condemn yourself. No, you let yourself go free. So that's what the last judgment here is, the gift to let yourself go free. Why are you judging yourself? Why are you putting so much stock in an illusion, in a world, in a false self, in an impersonal self, a personal self that is not our reality? Be not afraid of yourself. Be not afraid of your true identity as an innocent, whole, complete, divine being that shares itself with God. Be not afraid of love, for love is what you are, the real you that loves you. For it alone can heal all sorrow. It what? What is it that can heal all sorrow? The love that you are, the love that we share. For it alone can heal all sorrow. For love alone can wipe away all tears. For love can gently waken from his dream of pain that which God created, whom God acknowledges as his. Be not afraid of love. Be not afraid of yourself, your reality. Be not afraid of your innocence, your wholeness, your completeness. Be not afraid of your divinity. Be not afraid of your sinlessness, your guiltlessness. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. There is no fear in God. There is no fear in love. And in the real you that loves you, there is no fear. So where fear comes from, it's still a belief in a false idea or a false self. When we fear, we have placed our belief in a false idea or a false self. And we have forgotten reality. We have forgotten that we are love, that we are loving, and that we are lovable. Be not afraid of this. True salvation, real salvation, asks us, give this love welcome. Give your true identity welcome. For the first time, introduce yourself to your real self. Maybe the first time. Welcome the love that you are. Welcome the love that we share. Welcome the equality that you share with God and with everyone. But we can't do it if we're holding on to this world thought system, the belief in separation. If we're holding on to all the labels and all the conditionings that we have been highly labeled, trained, and conditioned in by this world, all the differences that we make, all of the false ideas that we have created, we can't hold on to them and welcome love. You have to let it go. Why would anyone not let sin consciousness, fear, and guilt go in exchange for love? That's how strong the belief has been. But in this holy instant, in this moment, welcome the love that we share. Embrace yourself as the love that you are. This is your salvation. And God guarantees that every one of us at the appointed time will embrace this. What is the appointed time? The appointed time is now, because that's the only time there is. The only time that there is now. Now faith is. And it is your exchange of unreality to reality that becomes the substance of things hoped for. It becomes the evidence of the thing that is not seen. And the thing that is not seen is the real you, which is love. But it is seen when you embrace it and your life begin to reflect it. Your thoughts, your perception, and your actions begin to project your reality. So welcome yourself. And the world awaits your glad acceptance. Notice now, which will set it free, because the world knows when humanity is set free, that all the world is set free, because we're the one holding the world in condemnation. We are the source of the condemnation. And so if we are the source of the condemnation, we have to be the source of the salvation. And we are. So we take our place among what? The saviors of the world. And we do not hold our brother in hell, nor do we hold ourselves there, nor do we hold our brother in condemnation and judgment. But all the world goes free. This is God. Notice now, this is God's final judgment. This is not man's last judgment, but this is God's final judgment. See, we still have the parallel going here. The will of man and the will of God. One is false and one is real. Man will tell you there's a last judgment where there's going to be the great divide. But here the Course says that there's only God's final judgment, where there is no divide, where there's only one, where there's only love, and where eventually all humanity and all that God created will wake up to this one love. And all the world go free. So this is God's final judgment. You are still God's holy creation. That's the final judgment. You are still, as God created you, holy and blameless and irreprovable in his sight. As Paul said in Ephesians chapter 1, that before the foundation of the world, God already predetermined that we should be holy and blameless before him in love, that we would be innocent. And you are, and that's changed less. We are still what God created. We are still God's holy creation. Forever innocent. This is your final judgment. Forever innocent. All humanity, no exceptions. If you hold an exception, you're still holding on to fear and guilt and condemnation and judgment. You have to let the world go free. You have to let all humanity go free. No exceptions. Forever innocent. Regardless of what happened in the movie. Regardless of what happened among the figures in the movie. forever innocent, forever loving, and forever loved. This is who you are. As limitless as your creator. We are not subject to the limitations of this world. We're not subject to this dream of sin and guilt and limitation and fear and dread and death and birth and all of that, which is contrary to love and contrary to life. We're not subject to those things. Those are just insane ideas that we conjured up in a mind that believed it was separate and made whole religions out of it. We did that. Impeccable, right? Incredible, right? But we did that to ourselves. And God is correcting it here in his final judgment by saying we are still what God created. Forever innocent, forever loving, and forever loved, as limitless as God, and completely changeless and forever pure. You are the pure presence of God. This is who you are. I don't care what religion say. This is your reality. This is all humanity's reality. This is the great correction. This is the correction that we all been longing for. To know that God is love, and in God there is nothing but love and nothing but light. God is not an unloving father, as we made it out to be. That only happened in a deranged mind that believes in separation. Therefore, since this is God's final judgment, therefore, this is what all of this was there for. Awaken and return to God. Awaken and return to your true self. Awaken and return to that which you have never left. I told you this is all about what? All about this whole, all of this, and all of that, and all of that has been, is about the awakening of that which God created that fell asleep. It's all been about you and me. All have been about the awakening of humanity from the sleep, from the trance, from the hallucination of being separate from your creator. That's what it's all about. It's not about the bills, the girls, the family, all of this stuff that we have experienced. It's not about none of that stuff. All that stuff is passing away. You already know that. Every body you've seen appear on this earth has passed away. Why? Because it's not real. The only reality is your identity. The only reality is your awakening. The only reality is your enlightenment, your recognition. And so when we awake, when we are enlightened, when we are born again, what do? We return to our original self. We return home. All the prodigals come home. All of them. Jesus proved that all of them come home. He said, if there's one out there, I'm going to get him. Because we're not complete until all of God's creation has awakened to the reality of their true identity. I am your Father, and you are my creation. That's the final judgment. That God is the Father of all. And we are a part of the all. That is God's final judgment. There is no separation of the good and the bad. We made that up, and we need to let it go. We need to let that fearful idea go. We need to let the world go. We're holding the world in the judgment and condemnation, holding on to that idea and sharing that idea. We need to let it go. God is a loving Father. God is not an unloving Father. God is not in the business of sending people to a torture chamber. And we wonder why this generation won't have anything to do with our traditional religions. They don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't blame them. We need to let the idea go and embrace what God calls his final judgment, which is our freedom, all of our freedom, all of our love. All right. I'm going to stop right there, but for the next 10 lessons, these next 10 lessons will be lessons to support the idea of what the last judgment is. And it is love. It's our reality. It's our true identity. Stay on the journey with me. Come back on tomorrow. We'll be back on lesson 311. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.